The first sound wasn't a scream, nor was it the clatter of something falling to the floor. It was the soft crack of bone as the punch landed squarely on Emily Carter's face. She staggered, falling onto the cold-tiled kitchen floor, her vision swimming from the sudden sharp pain. The man standing over her, Daniel, her husband, remained there, his chest heaving, his green eyes blazing with a fury so intense Emily thought he might kill her right then and there. All of it because of one sentence, a seemingly harmless sentence. "Can you please put your phone away during dinner?" Emily had asked, her voice tired, but still gentle. And then in a flash, Daniel's clenched fist had flown into her cheekbone as if it were a natural reflex. Emily didn't scream. She was frozen. For the first time in their 10-year marriage, he had actually hit her. Blood trickled from the corner of her lip, the metallic taste spreading through her mouth. Emily tried to push herself up, but her body was trembling, her heart hammering. In that moment, she understood that everything had changed. And this would not be the only punch. Daniel stared down at her, his shoulders tense. "Don't you ever tell me what to do, Emily. Ever." His voice was cold, as if the blow he'd just delivered was of no consequence. Emily gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, forcing herself to her feet. Her eyes blurred with tears, but she managed to look straight at him. She didn't dare respond. A part of her was screaming to run, but her feet felt nailed to the floor. She was no longer the Emily Carter her friends had once called the luckiest girl in America. On their wedding day, Daniel had been the envy of everyone, a successful, handsome, decisive man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine ad. He had whispered in her ear the first time they met in that Brooklyn coffee shop, "I don't want to waste any time. You're the woman for me. We're going to get married." She had laughed then, thinking it was just a bold, playful line. But no, Daniel was serious. He was intense. He was certain, and to a girl just past 25 like Emily, that decisiveness was more attractive than anything else. They were married just 6 months after they started dating. A lavish wedding on the California coast, where all eyes were on the bride in her magnificent white gown. Emily believed she had stepped into a dream. But that dream had started cracking a long time ago. She just hadn't wanted to admit it. It began with seemingly harmless comments. "That dress is too short. You don't need to show that much. Jeans don't suit you. Wear something more modest. Don't wear such bright lipstick, I don't like it." Emily had once thought it was a sign of love, a little jealousy, a little concern. But gradually, her wardrobe turned into a collection of grays and blacks. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw a different woman, faded, submissive, with no light left in her eyes. But it had all stayed within a certain limit. Until tonight. That punch had shattered every boundary. Emily cupped her cheek, the swelling ache making her dizzy. A single sentence echoed in her mind as clear as a bell. This will be the last punch, one way or another, but in that moment, she had no idea how. Daniel turned his back, pouring himself a glass of red wine, as if he had just swatted an annoying fly. Emily watched him, her heart tight in her chest. Outside the window, the lights of New York City twinkled, brilliant but distant. The whole world was out there, yet she was trapped in this luxurious penthouse, a gilded cage. Emily wanted to scream. She wanted to smash the wineglass in his hand. She wanted to run out into the street regardless of the cold night air. But it all remained a thought. Instead, she quietly went into the bathroom and locked the door. Standing before the mirror, Emily looked at her face, bruised, her lip bleeding. She touched the swelling and tears streamed down her cheeks. It wasn't just a punch to her face. It was a punch to everything she had ever believed in. In the suffocating silence, a quiet determination began to smolder. Emily knew that if she stayed, there would be more punches. Maybe to her face. Maybe to her soul. And one day, maybe to her very life. Tonight's punch had opened her eyes. It was time to think of another way out. But Daniel was not a man who let go easily. He controlled everything from her finances and her friends to her smallest steps. Every escape route seemed to be blocked. Emily took a deep breath. her eyes in the mirror reflecting a mix of fear and defiance. She whispered to herself, her voice trembling but resolute. No more punches. Never again. The next morning, New York sunlight streamed through the enormous glass windows of the penthouse. Emily opened her eyes, the first sensation a sharp throb in her left cheek. The bruise had turned a deep purple swollen, as if to announce its presence to the world. She sat up. The room was silent. Daniel had left early, undoubtedly for his office in Midtown, where he reigned like a king over his financial firm. On the bedside table, a neat note with cold handwriting. We have a party tonight. Make sure you look presentable. D. Not a word of apology. Not a hint of remorse. Emily crumpled the note and threw it into the trash. She walked into the bathroom. The face in the mirror made her shudder. A bruised face didn't belong to a happy woman. It looked like a prisoner who had just escaped a torture camp. Emily tried to apply some concealer, but the makeup only made the bruise more prominent. A sudden knock on the door. Emily jumped. Her heart pounded and only one person came to mind, Daniel. But no, he wouldn't knock. He always used his own key, striding in as if the world belonged to him. She cautiously opened the door. In front of her was Sophie, her best friend from college, now a freelance journalist. Oh my God, Emily? Sophie gasped when she saw her friend's face. What happened? Emily quickly tried to hide her face, avoiding her gaze. I fell. In the kitchen. So clumsy. Sophie crossed her arms, her eyes filled with suspicion. You fell? How do you fall and get a mark that looks exactly like a punch? Emily was speechless. She wanted to tell the truth, to break down and cry in her friend's arms, but fear choked her throat. If Sophie knew, Daniel would surely find out. And Daniel always had ways of making people silent. I just fell, Emily repeated, forcing a smile. Sophie didn't press, but her eyes said it all. I don't believe you. They sat on the sofa. Sophie chattered about work, trying to break the heavy atmosphere. Emily listened, but her mind was in turmoil. She realized that Sophie's presence, even for just a short hour, felt like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. When Sophie left, a cold emptiness enveloped Emily. She wandered through the vast apartment, touching the white walls, the expensive paintings, the crystal chandeliers, all the things Daniel had bought to show off his wealth. But nothing belonged to her. Even the bank account in her name was controlled by Daniel. The phone on the table buzzed. A text from Daniel. Wear the red dress. I don't want you looking like a servant. Emily stared at the screen. She hated that red dress. It was too revealing, too ostentatious, not her at all. But Daniel demanded it, and she knew the consequences of disobeying. That evening, Emily appeared at the party with Daniel. Dazzling crystal lights, laughter, and chatter filled the grand hall of the Manhattan Hotel. Everyone complimented Emily on her beauty. Everyone envied the perfect couple. No one saw the bruise behind the thick layer of makeup. No one heard the shouting from the night before. Daniel put his arm around Emily, his smile perfect, as if he were the model husband. He whispered in her ear, his voice sweet but laced with a threat. Smile. If you dare embarrass me in front of anyone, I will make you regret it for the rest of your life. Emily smiled. A smile that only she knew was fake. In that moment, she looked around the room at the strange faces, the empty compliments, and understood that she was living in a play. Daniel was the director, and she was just a forced actress. But deep inside, another voice spoke. It's time, Emily. You can't go on like this. You can't be a puppet forever. She took a deep breath, keeping the smile on her face, but a dangerous thought began to form in her mind. A thought of escape. For the first time in years, Emily wasn't just afraid. She was starting to calculate, and she knew to escape Daniel there were only two ways: either run far away or take him down in the very game he had created. That night, after the party ended, Daniel was drunk but still carried an air of authority. He moved through the polite applause and praise like a king in his little world. Emily walked silently beside him, holding her fake smile until the penthouse elevator doors closed. As soon as they were alone, Daniel dropped the polite facade. He loosened his tie, slumped onto the sofa, and pulled out his phone, barking orders at someone in his company. His voice was sharp, commanding. Emily stood still, watching him, feeling both disgusted and clearer than ever. She realized something: Daniel wasn't a god. He was just a man accustomed to being in control, to being worshipped. And all of that could be shaken. After Daniel fell asleep, Emily quietly walked into the living room. The city lights shone through the glass, illuminating her face. In that moment, Emily raised a hand to her swollen purple bruise and thought, this is no longer just fear. This is evidence. She needed a plan. But it couldn't be obvious. Daniel was too clever, too used to controlling everything. If she made one slip, the consequences would be even more horrific. Emily sat down at her desk and opened an old laptop that Daniel rarely noticed. She started writing. Not an email, not a diary, but a detailed record: every event, every word, every bruise. Date, time, place, action. A secret file on her real life. She saved the file in a disguised folder, naming it Recipes 2017. Daniel hated cooking. He would never open it. The next morning, Daniel left for work early. Emily put on a long-sleeved shirt to cover her bruises and went out. She didn't go shopping as usual. Instead, she met Sophie at a small coffee shop in Brooklyn, a place where they used to sit for hours as students. Sophie watched Emily walk, and her expression pained. You can't keep lying. I know what Daniel did. Emily took a deep breath. Sophie, listen. I can't just leave. He controls everything: the bank accounts, the credit cards, even my phone. If I disappear, he'll find me within a day. So what's your plan? Stay and let him kill you. Sophie snapped, her voice choked with emotion. Emily leaned forward, lowering her voice. No, I'm going to find a way to take him down. But I need proof. And I need your help. Sophie was silent. As a journalist, she understood the power of the truth, but she also understood the danger of confronting a wealthy, powerful man like Daniel Carter. Are you sure, Em? This isn't just a family matter anymore. This is war. Emily nodded, her eyes flashing with a rare hardness. I've lived in this cage for too long. If I don't break it, I'll suffocate. They talked for hours. Sophie would help Emily keep a backup of the secret file. If Daniel discovered it, Emily would still have a copy safe. At the same time, Sophie promised to dig into Daniel's shady business dealings, something the media had whispered about but never had proof of. Leaving the coffee shop, Emily felt both trembling and relieved. For the first time in years, she felt she had an ally. But that fragile hope was almost crushed that very evening. Daniel came home unexpectedly early. He walked into the bedroom, his gaze sharp as a knife. Where did you go today? Emily's heart pounded, but she kept her composure. I went to buy some groceries. The fridge was empty. Daniel narrowed his eyes, studying her every move. She knew he was testing her. Finally, he just grunted and went to the living room to open a bottle of whiskey. Emily went into the bathroom, leaned against the door, and exhaled. One small mistake, and he would discover everything. She looked at herself in the mirror. A stranger looked back, dark circles under her eyes, a pale face but deep within. There was a small flame. Emily understood that the game had just begun. And in this game, she was no longer the puppet. She was the challenger. A week passed since the meeting in the Brooklyn coffee shop. On the surface, nothing seemed to have changed. Daniel still went to work with his arrogant air, still hosted lavish parties, and was still the successful husband in everyone's eyes. Emily still walked beside him, smiling at the right times, staying silent in the right places. But beneath the surface, a crack was growing, and Emily was the only one who could feel it breaking. Every night after Daniel was fast asleep, she would open her laptop and add more lines to her secret file: verbal abuse, punches hidden beneath her clothes, suspicious electronic transactions she accidentally saw when Daniel left his work laptop open. Emily knew that evidence of domestic violence alone wasn't enough. Daniel had money lawyers and the ability to twist the truth in court. She needed more. She needed to prove that he wasn't just an abuser but a criminal. And Sophie was her bridge. One morning, Sophie called. Her voice was low but urgent. I found something. Daniel isn't just running a normal financial firm. There are transactions moving back and forth with a company in the Cayman Islands. The numbers aren't small. Emily gripped the phone, her hand trembling. You mean money laundering? Possibly. Or tax evasion. But it's definitely not clean. I don't have enough proof yet, but there are a lot of signs. If we dig deeper, we might be able to bring him down. Emily was silent. Two conflicting emotions rose within her: hope and fear. Hope because she could finally escape. Fear because if Daniel found out, he wouldn't just use his fists. He could destroy her entire life, maybe even take it. We have to be careful, Sophie, Emily whispered. Daniel has eyes everywhere. If he knows you're involved. Don't worry, Sophie cut in. I've investigated powerful men before. He's not the first. But Emily... Sophie's voice softened. You have to stay strong. If you hesitate, everything will fall apart. Emily nodded silently, though Sophie couldn't see. I am. That evening, as she sat at dinner with Daniel, Emily tried to remain calm. He was talking about a big deal, boasting with his usual self-satisfaction. But amidst his bragging, Emily heard a crucial detail. Those guys in the Caymans are demanding more collateral. But I'll handle it. They wouldn't dare make trouble for me. Emily looked down, hiding the spark that flashed in her eyes. What Sophie had found was true. Daniel really was involved with the Cayman Islands. She took a sip of wine, trying to hide the tremor in her hands. You're always so good at figuring things out, she said softly. Daniel smiled, pleased. He always loved the way Emily showed admiration, even if it was sometimes fake. But he didn't know that every word he spoke was becoming another thread for her to tighten the noose around his neck. Late that night, Emily stood by the glass window looking down at the sleepless city. The streams of headlights, the glittering lights from the skyscrapers, it all made her feel both small and powerful. Emily Carter, she told herself, you've been silent for too long. Now it's your turn to speak. But she knew she couldn't be rash. Daniel was a wild animal. If cornered too soon, he would lash out violently. She needed to be patient to wait for the right moment. The bedroom door opened. Daniel appeared, his hair messy, his eyes half awake. He wrapped his arms around Emily's waist, holding her tight as if to possess her. What are you thinking about, huh? He whispered, his voice thick with sleep. Emily fought back a shiver and smiled faintly. Just looking at the city. Daniel placed a forceful kiss on her neck, then pulled her back to bed. Emily closed her eyes, letting the wave of disgust wash over her, but in her mind a single sentence echoed. Just endure a little longer. The time will come. 3 days later, Sophie sent Emily an email with a disguised subject line, recipe for lasagna. Inside there was no recipe, but a list of documents, names of shell companies, transaction dates, and transfer amounts. Emily read it over and over, her heart pounding. This wasn't just a crack in Daniel's perfect facade. This was a deep chasm. If she was careful, she could use it to destroy the entire empire Daniel had built and free herself. But at the same time, she understood clearly the further she went, the closer the danger. And one day Daniel would realize that the gilded cage he had created was starting to crack. Monday morning, Emily sat at the dining table pretending to read a magazine while Daniel drank his coffee and scrolled through his phone. The atmosphere was silent, broken only by the clink of a spoon against a cup. But inside, anxiety was surging through her. For 3 straight nights, she and Sophie had exchanged encrypted emails, sharing Daniel's financial data. Sophie was confident they had enough leads to bring in the FBI. But Emily knew that the deeper they went, the higher the risk of being discovered. Daniel put his phone down and stared at her. Emily, what have you been doing on the computer so much lately? Her heart stopped. She put the magazine down and forced a smile. Oh, I was just looking at some recipes. I wanted to try some new dishes. Daniel didn't smile. His eyes narrowed, searching. A long silence made Emily feel like she couldn't breathe. Then he shrugged, stood up, and gave her a light kiss on the forehead before leaving. But Emily knew he was starting to suspect. That afternoon, Sophie met Emily in a quiet park in Queens where there were no security cameras and few people. Sophie brought a USB drive. "In here," she whispered, "is a full copy of the transactions. Daniel Carter is laundering money through at least 3 shell companies. If we give this to the FBI, they'll open an investigation immediately." Emily took the USB, her hand trembling. "But if Daniel finds out I have this, he'll kill me." "Then let me keep it," Sophie said, her gaze firm. "I'm used to dealing with danger." Emily looked at her friend, her heart filled with gratitude. But at the same time, another fear crept in. Daniel had eyes and ears everywhere, from his employees to his connections in politics. If Sophie was discovered, the consequences would be unimaginable. That evening, Daniel returned late. Emily was sitting on the sofa reading a book, trying to look calm. He walked over, threw his briefcase on the table, his voice heavy. "Someone in the company has been leaking information. I'm going to find out who it is." Emily looked up, her stomach dropping. She whispered, "Who do you think it is?" Daniel walked slowly toward her, his eyes boring into hers. "I don't know yet, but I have a feeling it's very close." Emily held her breath, trying not to tremble. She knew Daniel was testing her. He was like a predator smelling blood and ready to pounce. "You're worrying too much," she said, forcing a smile. "I don't even understand what you do at the company. How could I leak anything?" Daniel was silent for a long moment, then let out a soft laugh. He kissed her a kiss that was both sweet and threatening. "I'm just testing you, Emily. But remember, this betraying me is signing your own death warrant." When Daniel went into his office, Emily sat frozen. Sweat soaked the back of her shirt. She realized he was watching her. The next day, Emily went to Sophie and told her everything. Sophie gritted her teeth. "We have to act fast. If we wait, he'll destroy the evidence. Or destroy you." "No," Emily protested. "If we go to the FBI now, Daniel will know I was involved. I need more time to prepare, to have an escape route." Sophie sighed, but agreed. "Fine, but don't wait too long. I'll contact an FBI agent I know, just to feel things out. I won't mention your name." Emily nodded, her heart torn. She wanted to escape now, but fear held her tight. Every time she remembered Daniel's cold fist, she felt small and fragile. That night, when Daniel was sound asleep, Emily crept out and opened her phone. She was going to delete all the emails with Sophie. But when she turned on the device, she discovered a spyware app had been installed. All of her texts, emails, and calls could have been monitored by Daniel. Emily dropped the phone, her heart racing. She quickly deleted the app, but she knew in her gut it might already be too late. She ran to the bathroom and threw up from the stress. Looking in the mirror at her pale face and panicked eyes, Emily wondered, will I get out in time? Or will I die in this gilded cage? The next morning, Daniel made a surprising suggestion. "This weekend, let's go on a trip to the Hamptons, just the two of us. I think you need to get out of the city for a bit." Emily forced a smile, but a chill ran down her spine. A private getaway to a secluded place, far from friends, far from everyone, could be Daniel's opportunity to deal with her permanently. And for the first time, Emily saw it clearly. Her time was running out. The blue sea of the Hamptons stretched out before them, golden sunlight shining down on the luxurious beachfront villas. Emily sat in the car, gazing at the romantic scenery, but her heart was pounding violently. Beside her, Daniel drove, his face calm, occasionally smiling and talking, as if this were just a sweet getaway. "I think we need some privacy," he said, his hand squeezing her thigh lightly. "Away from the city, away from all the gossips." Emily forced a smile, hiding her trembling. In her purse was another phone, one Sophie had given her for emergencies. She had tucked it deep inside, praying Daniel wouldn't find it. The beach house was perfect transparent glass walls, a sparkling pool, and just the two of them. Emily shivered as she stepped inside. There were no close neighbors, no staff. If Daniel wanted to do something, no one would hear her scream. The first night, Daniel opened a bottle of wine. He poured Emily a glass, looking deep into her eyes, gentle but calculating. "You know," he said, his voice low, "I hate betrayal. It makes me lose control." Emily held the glass, her hand shaking slightly. For a moment she wondered if the wine was drugged. She took a small sip, then set the glass down, trying to smile. "I've never betrayed you, Daniel." He smiled, but his eyes were cold. "I want to believe that." In the middle of the night, Emily couldn't sleep. She quietly stepped out onto the deck, holding the backup phone. She texted Sophie. "He brought me to the Hamptons. It feels like a trap." The reply came instantly. "I've notified the FBI. They're monitoring his accounts. If anything happens, stay in contact. Don't be alone with him for too long." Emily bit her lip, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't leave now. Daniel had locked the cars and taken the keys. The spacious house had become a beautiful prison. The second day, Daniel's attitude changed. He cooked breakfast, smiled, and talked kindly, even taking Emily for a walk on the beach. But in every gesture, Emily felt absolute control. He kept his eyes on her constantly, as if on guard. When she tried to walk a little further on the sand, Daniel called her back sharply. "Don't go too far, my love. The waves are strong here." Emily turned back and saw him standing there, his eyes fixed on her, a gentle smile on his face, but a look as sharp as a knife. That evening, a storm rolled in. Lightning tore across the sky and the wind howled. The power in the villa flickered. Emily sat in the living room, clutching a book, her mind in a panic. Daniel walked in carrying another bottle of wine. A stormy night, perfect for two. He placed a glass in front of her, then sat down opposite her, watching her in silence. The silence stretched on, suffocating. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Emily, is there anything you want to tell me?" Her heart stopped. "What do you mean?" He tilted his head, his eyes darkening. "There have been emails, meetings, with Sophie. Did you think I wouldn't know?" Emily froze. Her entire body felt like ice. "So, he knew." "Daniel, I was just—" "Just what?" He cut her off, his voice sharp. "Just digging into my business. Just betraying the man who gave you everything." He shot up from his chair, pacing like a caged animal. A loud clap of thunder outside illuminated his face in a flash of white light, a face twisted with rage. Emily trembled, backing away. She had to think fast. If she confessed, she would die. If she denied it, she might have a chance. I was just worried about you," she said, her voice choked. "Sophie, she dragged me into it. I swear I never meant to betray you." Daniel stopped. His eyes were hateful, but his gaze wavered. He walked over, lifted her chin, and forced her to look directly into his eyes. "If I find out you're lying, I will bury you in the sand out there, where no one will ever find you." Emily swallowed hard, tears overflowing. "I understand." That night, as Daniel slept soundly after his rage, Emily quietly took out the backup phone. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably, but she managed to text Sophie. "He knows. I'm afraid I won't get out. Do something before it's too late." Outside, the storm raged. Beside her, Daniel breathed evenly, his arm draped over her like an invisible chain. Emily stared at the ceiling, praying silently. She knew tomorrow morning could be her last. A gray sky hung over the Hamptons. The storm offshore hadn't subsided. Waves crashed violently against the cliffs, and the wind shrieked through the glass windows. Inside the cold villa, Emily sat motionless on the bed, her eyes wide open in the darkness. Beside her, Daniel was still asleep, his breathing even. But Emily knew one wrong move, and he would wake up, and then every escape route would be sealed shut. The backup phone in her nightgown pocket felt as heavy as a bomb. The last message she'd sent to Sophie had gone unanswered. She didn't know if the FBI believed her or if they were coming to save her. At dawn, Daniel woke up abruptly. He threw on a robe and walked out, his voice echoing down the hall. "I have to go out and meet someone. You stay here. Don't go anywhere." The door slammed shut. Emily shot up, her heart pounding. This was her only chance. She quickly opened the phone and typed, "He just left. Maybe to take care of someone. Please come now. I don't have much time." After sending it, she deleted the messages. But as she trembled, Emily heard a faint sound, a click. She spun around. On the living room ceiling, a small camera's light blinked. Oh God, Daniel had installed more surveillance. Around noon, Daniel returned. The wind threw the door open, his coat soaked. He wasn't carrying anything, but his eyes were wild with fury. "Something funny happened, Emily," he said with a smirk. "An old friend of yours was just in a car accident. Sophie wasn't it." Emily was speechless. Her entire body went numb. "What? What did you do to her?" Daniel laughed, a booming sound. "I didn't have to do anything. Accidents happen every day." "But what a coincidence, right?" Emily covered her mouth, tears welling up. If Sophie was dead, she was completely alone. But Daniel didn't know that at that very moment in an FBI station in Manhattan, Sophie, though slightly injured from the collision, was desperately trying to convince the agent in charge. "Listen to me," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "If we're too slow, Emily will die. Daniel Carter doesn't play games. He's already started eliminating threats." The agent nodded, speaking quickly into his radio. A small team was immediately dispatched to the Hamptons. But the storm had blocked the roads. They could only approach by boat, and that would take hours. In the villa, evening fell. Emily sat on the sofa as Daniel brought out the wine. "I think," he said, his voice as light as the wind, "we should start over. No more secrets, no more suspicion." He placed a glass of wine in her hand, forcing her to take it. Emily raised it to her lips, but only pretended to sip. In that instant, Daniel's eyes flashed. He knew she was scared. "Drink it," he commanded. Emily closed her eyes and drained the glass. Her throat burned. A terrible fear rose within her. What if this wine is poisoned? In the middle of the night, the wind howled louder, blowing a window open. Emily woke with a start. Daniel was no longer in bed. She crept out, her heart hammering. A shuffling sound came from downstairs. Peeking over the railing, she saw Daniel on a satellite phone, hissing every word. "Tomorrow, move all the money to the new account. And get a boat ready. I can't stay here much longer." Emily backed away, her heart about to explode. He was going to run. If the FBI didn't arrive in time, all the evidence would vanish. Suddenly, the floorboard beneath her creaked. Daniel looked up, his eyes locking with hers. "Still awake, Emily?" She froze. In the dim light, Daniel was holding a gleaming kitchen knife, slowly ascending the stairs. What are you doing with that knife?" she stammered. Daniel smiled coldly. "I'm tired of being watched. Maybe it's time to resolve this permanently." Emily backed away, her heart racing. She ran into the bedroom and locked the door. Daniel pounded on it from the outside, the wood vibrating violently. In desperation, Emily pulled out the phone and sent a quick message to Sophie, not knowing if she was even alive. "He's going to kill me. Right now. Do something." The door burst open. Daniel lunged in, the knife flashing. Emily screamed, throwing a table lamp at him. In the chaos, she darted into the hallway and scrambled down the stairs, her heart thundering. Outside, the storm raged. Emily ran onto the deck, rain lashing her face. But Daniel was right behind her, knife in hand, his shouts echoing, "You won't get away, Emily." Just then, a series of bright lights flooded the villa. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker, cutting through the wind. "FBI, drop your weapon." Daniel froze. Emily collapsed onto the steps, gasping for breath, her tears mixing with the rain. But Daniel didn't drop the knife. He grabbed Emily, pulling her back, pressing the blade to her throat. "Stay back, or I'll kill her." The sound of the waves, the rain, the frantic beat of Emily's heart. She knew one more mistake, and it would all be over. The wind howled, and rain whipped across her face. Emily was held tight in Daniel's arms, the cold blade pressed against her neck. His breath was hot and ragged in her ear. Ahead, bright flashlight beams cut through the night. The FBI's voice echoed over the loudspeaker. "Daniel Carter, you are surrounded. Release the hostage and surrender now." Daniel let out a dry, crazed laugh. "Don't you know who I am? I have enough money to buy this whole city. Back off, or I'll kill her right here." Emily stiffened. The knife pressed deeper, breaking the skin, drawing blood. She didn't dare breathe. An FBI agent hidden behind rocks near the shore kept his gun aimed at Daniel. The voice on the loudspeaker continued. "You have no way out, Daniel. The sea is rough. The roads are blocked. Drop your weapon, and we'll make sure you live to see a courtroom." Daniel screamed. "A courtroom? You think I'm stupid enough to let you put me on trial? I'd rather die." He dragged Emily backward toward the edge of the shore where violent waves crashed against the cliffs. His grip was like steel, making it hard for Emily to breathe. A thought flashed through Emily's mind. If I do nothing, I'll die. If the FBI shoots, I might die too. But if I don't take a risk, there will be no chance at all. She took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice steady. "Daniel, you don't have to do this. We can start over. I'm still with you." He looked down at her, his crazed eyes showing a flicker of confusion, a moment of weakness. Emily seized the opportunity, her hand subtly closing around his wrist. Thunder cracked overhead. In that instant, Emily twisted with all her might, wrenching Daniel's wrist away. The knife flashed in the lightning and clattered onto the rocks. "Fire!" an agent yelled. A volley of shots rang out, tearing through the rain. Daniel was hit in the shoulder, screaming, but he still didn't let go of Emily. In his frenzy, he tried to shove her toward the cliff's edge. Emily struggled, screaming in desperation. "Let me go!" Another bullet pierced Daniel's leg. He collapsed to his knees, his hand finally releasing her. Emily felt the storm winds whipping at her, rainwater blurring her vision. FBI agents rushed forward, pulling her away. Daniel, blood spreading across the wet rocks, tried to crawl toward her, his eyes filled with hatred. "Emily, you're mine, forever." Before he could reach her, the butt of an agent's rifle brought him down. His body fell limp, motionless in the torrential rain. Emily trembled, completely exhausted. She was wrapped in a thick blanket, hearing an agent report over the radio. "Hostage is secure. Target is neutralized. Requesting immediate medical." In Emily's mind, the terrifying images replayed: the knife at her throat, the crazed look in his eyes, his screams that drowned out the storm. She gasped for breath, her tears lost in the rain. Finally, she was alive. The next morning, the storm had passed. The Hamptons' sky was an unusually clear blue. The FBI left with Daniel in handcuffs, white bandages wrapped around his shoulder and leg. Emily sat on the villa steps, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the sea. Sophie appeared, one arm in a sling, but her eyes were bright. "You're alive," Sophie whispered, hugging her friend tightly. Emily burst into tears, clinging to Sophie. All the stress, fear, and desperation of the past days came pouring out. "What now?" Emily asked, her voice hoarse. Sophie looked her straight in the eye. "Now you're free. Daniel will face justice. He can't hurt you anymore." Emily nodded, but she was still trembling. She knew the fight wasn't completely over. Daniel's connections, his assets, his associates were still out there. But for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. As the car carrying Daniel drove away, Emily stood up and took a deep breath of the salty air. The morning sun warmed her face. A quiet whisper echoed in her heart. "I've finally escaped the gilded cage, and from now on, I will live for myself." The Hamptons' sky was bright after the storm, but a heaviness lingered in Emily's heart like a passing thundercloud. The villa was now strangely silent. The walls had witnessed the fake sweet nothings, the terrifying nights, and Daniel's final crazed screams. It all seemed to echo in every corner. That morning, Sophie handed Emily a hot cup of coffee. She placed a gentle hand on her friend's shoulder. Are you okay? Emily gave a faint smile, her gaze fixed on the steam rising from the cup. No, but at least I'm alive, and I'm free. Sophie said nothing, just sat beside her, both of them looking out at the sea. The waves lapped at the shore as if no storm had ever passed. The next day, Emily was invited by the FBI to give her testimony. In a small, sterile room under cold fluorescent lights, she sat across from a panel of agents. The questions were relentless. When did you know Daniel was preparing to flee? Did you suspect he was involved in money laundering? Can you provide a list of his close friends and business partners? Emily answered, her voice trembling but clear. She spoke of the nights Daniel disappeared, the mysterious phone calls, the envelopes of cash. Each word felt like peeling away another layer of her traumatic marriage. That night back in this empty villa, Emily couldn't sleep. She opened her phone. The screen lit up with dozens of notifications from the press, from old acquaintances, from the socialite friends who had once praised Daniel. Now all of them were just curious, judgmental. One message stood out. I know you're a victim, but don't think the FBI can protect you forever. Daniel has people on the outside. Be careful. A chill went down Emily's spine. Who sent that? In the days that followed, she began therapy. The psychologist listened as she confessed, I still hear his voice. When I close my eyes, I see the knife at my throat. I'm afraid one day he'll come back. The doctor nodded, his voice gentle. Those feelings are normal. But what's important is that you are taking steps out of the darkness. One afternoon, Emily stood before a mirror and looked at herself. Not the perfect wife in a lavish dress Daniel had forced her to wear, but a woman with dark circles under her eyes, which now held a glint of determination. She took a pair of scissors and cut off the long hair Daniel had always praised. It fell to the floor as light as shedding chains. Emily looked in the mirror and whispered, From now on, I will be my own Emily. A month later, Daniel's trial began. Emily walked into the courtroom, greeted by the flash of dozens of cameras. Daniel sat in the defendant's box, his face pale, a white bandage still visible on his shoulder. His eyes met hers. A flash of fury, then a twisted smile. You'll never get away from me. Emily took a deep breath and held her head high. This time she didn't flinch. The trial concluded with Daniel being sentenced to many years in prison. The headlines were sensational, Hamptons financial kingpin falls. But for Emily, that victory wasn't about revenge. It was just the starting point of a new life, one where she had to learn to trust herself, to sleep without nightmares. That evening, Emily and Sophie went to the beach. The waves were gentle and moonlight shimmered on the water. Sophie took her hand. You're going to be okay. One day you'll love again, trust again. But for now, just enjoy this freedom. Emily smiled. A tear rolling down her cheek. The fear was still there, but something stronger was growing in its place, hope. On the sand, Emily wrote a single word and let the waves wash it away, freedom. And for the first time in years, she believed she could truly start again.